Greetings, distinguished followers, chosen chimp here. I hope you are all doing well, and welcome to another one of my weekly rambles. Allow me to state the stupidly obvious and tell you all that we are officially less than a week away from the brand new series of Doctor Who. Excellent stuff. I will be reviewing these episodes and covering each one as and when they drop, and I am looking forward to diving deep into this series, and I'm looking forward even more to all of you joining me and just taking this journey, seeing where it takes us, finding out what secrets should I say, this new series holds. So in my last video I talked about my expectations for this new season, what I hope to see, what I hope not to see, and this week I'm a little more specifically focused on the first episode alone, the Robot Revolution, how this will fare as a season opener, what kind of delights it will give us. Obviously, it's the introduction to the brand new companion Belinda Chandra. We have got these gorgeous visuals that have landed in various trailers and images and whatnot, and on the surface it looks like it's going to be a bit of a good one. So, whetting my appetite this week was an article that was published by the Radio Times on April the 2nd, and this article featured an interview with one Mr. Russell T Davies from Doctor Who magazine. So, I'm going to read a bit of this article out to you now. And this made me ever so slightly more interested in the Robot Revolution, so here's a bit I'm going to read. The story of this particular chapter involves Belinda being taken in by a society of robots, which orbits a star named after her as a present from an ex-partner. A nice idea with unintended and dangerous side effects. They really think she's their queen, explained screenwriter Russell T Davies via Doctor Who magazine, which is so mad. You have to make the robots mad too, and the maddest thing of all is the AI generator. Who wants to marry her? Poor Belinda. On the episode's timely elements, he continued, we are all discussing AI, whether it works, how it might help or harm us. This is a moment for Doctor Who to reflect that. Said Russell T Davies, giving 3 thumbs up while a slightly stranger Russell T Davies stood out of focus in the background of the image. Good. I'm glad about this because I was wondering when Doctor Who would weigh in on the whole AI thing and do some commentary. I mean, how can it not, for goodness sake? AI is a very broad topic. It covers a lot of things. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of nuanced discussion across a great deal of sectors on planet Earth. It's everywhere, and there are all kinds of debates and controversies, and I'm wondering how this is going to cover that, whether this story will cover the broad spectrum briefly of AI. Will it talk more about the misuse of AI, how there's a danger of it spreading misinformation, or will it talk more specifically about generative AI, about the topics of copyright and plagiarism and ownership, how people who have created art and writing and music have had their work basically plagiarized by big tech giant companies to train their own bots, thus undermining the efforts of small creators who are already struggling to make a living as it is. As a writer, as a veteran TV writer, I wonder what Russell T Davies' thoughts are on tools such as ChatGPT and Krong, or whatever it's called. So I'm looking forward to the commentary and the allegories that this story will give. It's made me that much more excited for it. And yeah, this is definitely more my cup of tea than the Space Babies, which was last season's opener. Excuse me, I mean, we all like the talking babies and the snot monster, and I especially like the farting spaceship. But this is definitely more my sort of thing, and I think it's hopefully going to have a bit more substance and a bit more food for thought this time around, and I like to think it's going to be an extremely solid opener for a brand new series. So yeah, we'll find out. Robot Revolution next Saturday. I can't wait, and I'm sure you can't either. So yeah, from AI and humans and things to the more augmented type of human, aka Cybermen. There you go, that's my segue. But I have done something a little different this time. This time I am covering a piece of New Who expanded Cybermen media, which I don't think I've ever done before, to my knowledge, unless I'm talking about new episodes such as the Power of the Doctor, which featured Cybermen. And obviously I've covered modern, recent Big Finish stories, but they are etched in the classical tablet of Doctor Who lore, so that's not New Who, so this is a New Who expanded Cybermen story. And this is something that I decided to do because I read a comment that somebody posted on one of my videos a few weeks back asking me how much I knew about the plague of the Cybermen. And at first, I thought that's definitely got to be an audio, and there is an audio version of this. It features vocal talents from your main man Nicholas Briggs and also from the excellent Gone But Not Forgotten David Warner. But I'm talking specifically about the book, the source material, which after reading the comments and doing some research, I then purchased in ebook form and then read it on Kobo. Which, I've been reading like big, sprawling, epic, historical novels and books about trees, which are basically dissertations. So this is a story that I chewed through in about 3 days. It's published by BBC Books and it's written by Justin Richards. It's Plague of the Cybermen, and it came out 2013. Came out April 2013, which is exactly a month before the transmission of Nightmare in Silver, which means that readers are encouraged to assume that the model of Cyberman we are dealing with here is the Cybus model depicted on the cover. So Justin Richards, the author of this book, has a lot of writing credentials to their name and has written a fair few Doctor Who novels. And I was very surprised to learn after I read this that according to Wiki Fandom, this is the first full-length BBC novel of the revived era to pit the Doctor against the Cybermen. So since 2005 and the revival of Doctor Who, however long after that the books started to be written, the expanded fiction books, it wasn't until this one that there was actually a full-length Cybermen novel, which I was quite interested to learn. So this is an interesting book. I did some research online just to see what the general consensus was, and a lot of the reviews consider this a bit of a mid affair, and I've read it. It's interesting. I can see how people might complain about the basicness of this story from one aspect. I mean, it's very, very easy and straightforward to read. Full confession, fake fan, it's been quite a long time since I've read a Doctor Who novel of the modern variety. So BBC Books of that era covering Doctor Who, I couldn't tell you 100% the style of the writing, but for me this style of writing seemed very basic and straightforward, or at least that's how it seemed to me. Having read Shogun recently, which is a big book, the pages are massive and the words are tiny. The story it's a kind of basic story with basic characters, but there is a sense of community spirit and a bit of a heartwarming aspect to the characters. There are a few twists and turns, which I'm not going to spoil. This isn't going to be a full spoiler review, although I do intend to cover this in a bit more detail in one of my later videos for reasons that I will get into. But this is kind of sort of a pretty straightforward narrative in the grand scheme of things. The Doctor himself, the character of the Doctor, there is no mistaking that this is the 11th Doctor. He is written very well by Justin Richards, although I think the Smithisms, the mannerisms of Matt Smith's Doctor lean a little bit too heavily and a bit too exhaustingly into the joke aspects. Like, for example, he'll say something along the lines of, just giving an example here, that I kind of plucked out of my own head. He'll say something along the lines of, I have a brilliant plan, except it's not brilliant and it's not even a plan. In fact, I don't have anything at all. Which is funny, right? But he seems to be saying something of that ilk every other sentence, and it gets a little bit tiresome after a while, especially when readers know that Matt Smith's Doctor, that is an asset, that is a facet, shall I say, to his character, but there are also other parts. There's a more grittier, dramatic side to Matt Smith's Doctor, which doesn't really shine through, particularly in this story. But that is my only real criticism, because it is a fun read. If you haven't read it before, you will chew through it. It's very quick, and it's got quite a feel-good ending. To an extent, again, I won't spoil it, and I liked it. What can I say? It's Cybermen in a bit of a gothic setting, because the story is set in a 19th century village of Klimptonberg, where the Doctor lands. There's supposedly a plague, and the Doctor finds out it's not a plague, it's radiation from a crashed ship. Go figure. So this gives the story an opportunity to lean into the more sort of creepy undead aspect of Cybermen storytelling, the kind that you see in the Pandorica Opens, with that kind of zombie Cyberman who has to put his own arm back on and the head opens and you see the skull inside. I love that scene. I always talk about that scene in my videos. I think it's great. So you have the opportunity to see Cybermen bursting from graves and then chasing people through catacombs full of webs and skulls and torches, flaming torches and things like that. So it's a very gothic setting for Cybermen, which is great. I think the when you remove the futuristic technological artificial intelligence of Cybermen, there is a kind of sort of medieval undertone to their existence. A kind of Frankenstein aspect.
Frankenstein's not medieval, you flipping twit.
Of the fact that they are humans that have been recreated to make monsters, as it were. And this is another thing that this story leans into very heavily, and this is my favourite thing about the book, and the reason why I really wanted to bring it up, because it adds a interesting concept to Cybermen lore, which I don't think I've seen in many other Cybermen stories. And if you guys have, I'd like you to give me some examples. Again, I'm not going to spoil the ending or some of the twists. There are some cool twists at the end. Read it yourself if you want to know what they are. But leading up to that, you basically have Cybermen who are lying dormant, and they are being looked after by the pilot Cybermen, of which there are only a few. There's a small handful, maybe 2, 3 or 4, and they are just knackered, basically. They crash, there's bits missing from them, they're all rusty, their handles have snapped. So what they have done, they have utilised the dreams and wishes and hopes and ambitions of local humans to get them to basically rebuild to an extent. And one of the grisliest aspect of this is that when people die of the radiation sickness, they get taken into the burial ground, into the graveyard and into the catacombs, at which point the Cybermen utilise the use of basically grave robbers. 2 human grave robbers are stealing the dead, and the Cybermen are using their body parts as, well, how else can I put it? Spare parts. So basically you have this scenario where you have Cybermen with missing body parts that have been replaced with human parts. So you'll have a Cyberman with a human arm or a human leg, which is quite a grisly image, and even more grisly when the body part in question is in a state of putrefaction, when it's rotting, basically. So imagine a Cyberman with a rotting human arm or a rotting human leg, and this is what that story gives you. An interesting concept. And on the flip side, there's a character that has a Cyberman arm, which I think is a little less weird. I think there are probably stories where it's more likely for it to hone in on the concept of a person with Cyberman bits, but not ever really a concept of a Cyberman with person bits. So having that in the book was what really piqued my interest, and I want to talk further about this because when you strip away the kind of slightly sort of simplistic, feel-good aspects of this story, there is quite a dark, grotesque, Mary Shelley-esque aspect to this story, which is extremely fun, and I think the concept is great. And also, the other thing that this story has got is wolves. Cyber wolves. Animals. The entire lore of other creatures other than humans being utilised by the Cybermen and ingratiated into their cyber technology. I don't know if you remember me covering the Dr. 40 stories starring Peter Davison that Big Finish released a couple of years ago. There was one called Secrets of Telos, where you had these augmented, six-legged creatures that were cyberdized by the Cybermen, and they were like little six-legged tanks. And no, I don't have an image for that because it's an audio and nobody's ever drawn it. I hope to see those in a comic one day. And obviously, they go into a little bit of this in Wiki Fandom because you have the things, what are they called, from the next Doctor, the Cyber Shades, which is, I think, according to this, the amalgamation of brains of cats and dogs. And they were an interesting creation that were only ever used once. And yeah, so cyber wolves in this, which the Cybermen, should I say, kind of used as trackers to pick up scents, and they're basically guard dogs because the Cybermen are in a situation where they are underpowered and underutilized, so they need to use these dogs to basically protect them while they rebuild their army. So this is essentially a story of how Cybermen are really up against it. They're down on their numbers, they're down on their power, they're outnumbered and they're outmatched, but still that drive to survive prevails in their heads. And this is a tactic that they use to survive. It involves grave robbery, dismemberment, and all kinds of grisly stuff. And what do you expect from Cybermen? Do you think they're going to do something clean and nice? No, they're going to do something disgusting and horrible. And that is what I really love about this story. And that is what I think this story gives that no other Cybermen story, to my knowledge, provides in this context. And for that reason, I am going to consider Plague of the Cybermen a worthy addition to the Cybermen canon, despite the prevailingly negative reviews that I have seen of it online. I think there's a lot going for this story, and I very much like it, and I recommend it. And like I said, I'll be covering it in a bit more detail in my later videos. So there you go. And yeah, so this is a bit of a skinny video, I will admit. I am kind of making things a little bit quick and a little bit rapid this time around, just so I can focus on some bigger projects while I am reviewing the season 15 episodes over the upcoming weeks. I am also going to make good on my promises to create these high effort projects that I've been talking about for far too long. I'm sorry. I know you're all sick of me waffling on about this. I'm going to talk about the Dalek video again. Do you remember when I made my Croton video back in 2023, and in the middle of that video I'm standing in a place outside and I said to you all, yes, we've reached 20 Patreons, so now is the time that I make my one-off Dalek special video. Well, it's 2025 and I still haven't done it, but I'm working on it, and I'm working on other stuff too. My experimental project, that is pending. It's only going to be about 4 minutes long. It's an experiment. It might work, it might not. More details on that as and when. And I'm going to do more Cybermen stuff, naturally. Horrors of Mondas Part 4, that's going to come. And all the other Cybermen stuff I've discovered since I have been making these videos, Plague of the Cybermen included. So thank you very much for your patience. I'm looking forward to getting down and dirty with all this Chosen Chimp content during the spring and summer months, and I'd love you to join me along the way. And before I go, please allow me to haunt your weekend with a couple of images here. Cyber wolves, Plague of the Cybermen is not the only time that cyber wolves show up in Doctor Who. Here's a cyber wolf in an alternative 2006 in the excellent comic Supremacy of the Cybermen. Look at him there. But the one I'm more interested in is the one from the comic Enemy Mine. Okay, so here we go. Cyber wolf there. Look at his eyes. Yeah, enjoy that on your sunny weekend. If you want to catch up with me on social media, please check me out at thechosenchimp.bsky.social, or you can join me over on Patreon. For just £1 a month, you can become a distinguished follower, request your Doctor Who TV episode for me to review, and I will also mention your name in these videos. I'm also on TikTok. Scan the QR code for nonsense and misleading cakes and whatnot. TikTok stuff. I really don't know. That said, I hope everyone is having a great time. Take care of yourselves. A big love to you all. And most importantly, please, for the love of Pete and his world, have a good one.